everybody, hope you're doing well. Welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be doing my January wrap up of all the books I read in the month of January. I definitely started off 2023 positively. I read lots of books that were just like, I feel like the reason I read quite a lot is because most of them was like page turns, like literal ones that like you had to read on, and that's why I just got through them quite quickly. When I do my wrap-ups I usually just ramble on and on, but that's just because a certain number of the books that I have read I do plan to do full like video reviews on. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started on the first one, and that is Our Dining Table, the manga by Mita Ori. Translated by Amber Tamosaitis. I think, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, but this I gave 5 stars to. This was such a great start to the year, and yeah, so just a quick non-trigger warning for this book. This book contains like more fluff than like a teddy bear factory, more sweetness than like, I don't know, all the maple syrup in North America. This book is so extremely cute. It's literally a book that is giving you a hug. But yeah, so like definitely that's like, go on and treat yourself and read this book because it is gorgeous. It is so sweet. Basically we're following the main character Yutaka, who is a salaryman in Japan, and he gets like very like anxious like eating around people, but he is like really like culinary like talented. And then like whilst at lunch, this little adorable little boy Tane comes up and eats his onigiri, which is like seaweed around like a rice ball thing, and embarrassed by his little brother's actions, Minoru apologizes and is like sorry, and then the next day they come back, the brothers, and little Tane gives Yutaka a lollipop, and Minoru says, why don't you come and like cook? So yeah, so as I want to say, basically it follows the story of these 3 lovely characters just like getting to know each other and just like growing, and they cook and share meals and like things in their past, like issues and stuff that like made them stop being happy, and then like sharing them makes them happy again. And there's a little budding BL relationship which is just adorable. It's not sexual at all, so I just found that was just so sweet. Yeah, the writing is like, it's okay, but it's a manga, so like obviously you look at the pictures, which was so sweet. Oh my god, it was so lovely. They really just like they brought the story to life, and like the characters are just all so lovable. Yutaka, Minoru, Tane and their dad, but also like some of the like side characters, they all give off like cinnamon roll energy. Loved it. Yeah, and there is like some like pressing topics about like grief and like bullying and anxiety. I feel like they're handled very well, and it's just like, yeah. So yeah, I'll definitely totally recommend this, and like if you do not smile reading this, then like I'm sending you a virtual hug, because I'm sorry, I don't know how that's possible, because this movie is just so adorable. The next book I read was the audiobook of The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charlie Maxey. I read this digitally last year in December, basically about these 4 characters who like ramble on. But I listened to the audiobook because it was on BBC Sounds, and it was so good. I gave it 5 stars again. It's just, I really love it because the audiobook has these like nature sounds, and it's spoken so like just calming and really like really relaxing, and it is lovely. So if you are looking to consume this book, I would definitely recommend the audiobook as well as digitally as well. It is a really lovely. I read another manga called See You Later Mermaid by Dentu Hayane, translated by Tayachi. This I gave 4.25 stars. It was good, but like first of all I was like, what is going on? This is kind of weird, because it starts off with a young man, Tatsumi, sitting by the ocean, and then someone comes up to him and like this person gets like sand in their eyes, and then they go back to their hotel where they're both staying, but they don't actually know that, and they talk over drinks and stuff, and then Tatsumi says to the other man that he has like a weird power where like when he speaks a certain way, he makes like ocean sounds, and like it makes people like do things. Kind of strange. And then the following day, one of them says that they love them to the other man, and then it's all just like, this is moving a bit too fast. Wait, what is actually going on? So I was thinking like, do I want to continue, because this is like, what is actually going to happen? But I'm so happy I did continue, because it sort of like goes back to Tatsumi's childhood and his friendship with a young boy called Kazushi, and how their like bond grew, and how he found out about his power and like trying it out and different things like that. It unfolds, and like it's clear that Tatsumi like loves Kashumi, but Kashumi is like sort of like distancing himself and like getting along with the normal things people do in life. Yeah, so that's all I'm gonna say, but definitely this unfolding of the story is like a really rewarding part of the reading experience, and how like it is quite complicated, but when you piece it together, it does come together well. I said the writing and art wasn't like my favorite, but I did still, it was still quite enjoyable. The characters are quite complex, and there is quite a lot of cuteness. If you're not enjoying it after the first 2 chapters, just stick with it please, because it definitely does get better. Then I read Are You Happy Now by Hannah Jameson. This I gave 4.75 stars. This book I am actually going to do a whole video on, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but this book was, oh my god, this is so good. It was such like a mind like, what the F is actually going on? It was really great. Definitely a solid 4.75 stars. Definitely a very good book, but just a few things that wasn't fully to my taste in. But basically there's 4 people, Yoon, Emery, Andrew and Finn. They're 4 people at a wedding in New York, and then suddenly someone just stops, sits on the ground and just doesn't get up again, and like everyone's trying to like help her up, and she likes getting violent and stuff. And then afterwards there's multiple cases of people just sitting down and just stopping doing what they're doing, and so it's sort of like a dystopian thing about like a pandemic that's going on, and Emery is a reporter, so she's trying to find out what's happening. And this is happening, this whole like pandemic, and like what is happening to the people, like why are they just giving up, but that is sort of like in the background, and unlike most dystopias and stuff, that isn't the focus of the book. It's more about the characters and how they're dealing with like things that are happening because of this pandemic that's ongoing, and how like different like job opportunities come and go, and like different things like that. And yeah, I just felt it was really good, and I feel like it's sort of like a social commentary sort of on like the mental health pandemic crisis at the moment. And this sort of like is I think her friend dubbed it the most millennial novel ever, and I'm like, that is so good, because it really is, it delves deep into this sort of like generation, like the millennial generation, and like the like boomer v millennial v Gen Z, and sort of like just a lot of things. It definitely talks about a lot, so definitely check out my whole review video coming soon, because I do have so much to say about this book. But I would really totally recommend it, and I just, yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was such a page turner. Then the next book I read was this graphic novel, All Princesses Die Before Dawn by Quinten Zouton, translated by MB Valente. This I gave 4 stars too. and this is like a very solid 4-star book. The plot goes over one day, where there's like 3 main characters, Lulu, his sister Cam, and their mum, and it starts with the news of Princess Diana like dying in the car crash, because it's set in France and she died in Paris. And this is, but like they're all more focused on their own like dramas. Lulu discovering his sexuality and gender identity and first love of another boy. His sister Cam's relationship with an older boy who she's falling for, but like is being used by him. And then the mother's failing marriage. And this day is a decisive one for all of them in different reasons. And yeah, and it's like a slice of life approach like used, which I think was really nice. There is some heavier topics, but I don't feel like they was discussed too much, so the book could appeal to like the age range of Cam and Lulu, which is about like 7 to 16. The universal portrayal of like someone coming to terms with their like sexuality was done so well with like Lulu and his like friend. And there's like a certain bit, like you can't make one-to-one comparisons because everyone's journey is different, but there's a certain bit where he's doing something and you can just so clearly like see what is going on inside his head and like what he's feeling. And it is just like, when you see like yourself like in things and like certain things, it just really like holds your heart and you're just like, oh my god, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then the graphic elements of this novel is beautiful. They are so mesmerizing. There's like a recurring theme of like light and water, which adds like a dream like ethereal like notion to the book. But it's clear that like the foundations are in reality, and the characters are all like quite well developed, even though it's only over one day. Yeah, I said my only qualm is that like it could have done with a bit more discussion on things, and there was like loose ends sort of left, which like is ambiguous, yes, but like I don't see that was the point of it really. So yeah, so this is really a good book. I would so recommend it, but I do feel like maybe like another edition or something would have benefited from like what you can actually take from it. But yeah, I would really recommend it. Like the artwork is beautiful. Then I listened to Herland by Charlotte Perkins Gilmans. This I gave 1.5 stars. This is the worst book I've ever read. I absolutely despised it. I did a whole video around about it, because I do not really want to talk about this book anymore. Basically, 3 men go to Herland, which is like a country where there's no women, there's no men, and apparently in their history they sort of like learn to give birth like just by one woman. I hated it. It's like a certain type of feminism, but it's like a really like it's very turf energy, and like everything that these women care about is just giving birth and like motherhood, and there's like no equality, because like the men are all just like men are better and the women are all like women are better, and there's like the women and like their culture like they did like basically eugenics and genocide, and like yeah, as that's like so they got rid of like different races and different like mentally ill and disabled people, and it's just really not a very nice book. It's also written really badly. So yeah, I feel like if you want to read it from like a psychological, sociological perspective and critique it and like get like things from it like that, then it might be quite beneficial. But literally, it's kind of garbage. Like I really would not recommend it. It's so like really boring and like basic, and yeah, I didn't like it. So yeah, I would not recommend that book. Then I read When He Beckons by Hallie Starling. This I gave 2.5 stars. It's basically about a late 30s Zan meets 40-something Deacon at a skate park, and there's like a little bit of attraction there. And then they meet at Zan's job out at like a printing place because Deacon is a potential customer, but I didn't know that. And then Zan gives him like a tour, and like he starts like flirting and invites him to like a picnic slash canoe date, which they go on, and it unravels. I said the writing was okay, but a little bit amateur, and like there's some bits that I like, it doesn't like flow like fully. Like there's like a certain bit like cinema review, the guy's energy was infectious even now, and as Deacon was dressed in lightweight hiking clothes and heavy treaded boots, like as he was that, then like what, like it should like this, you know what I mean? And there's like, a lot of like unnecessary cursing and just like usage of the F word, which I didn't really feel like appropriate for people this age and like the audience. I don't really know, but it was not marketed as like a fluffy, spicy novella with romance tropes, books, good meals, and finding love. So I didn't really expect, personally, like I was expecting more romance because that's kind of what it says. But like the sex scenes dragged on, and I'm really not a smut reader. I do not like smut. And it's just a bit like cringy, like referring to Deacon flinging the case onto the bed, and he's not talking about a case, he's talking about something else. And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know, but I do feel like it is quite good because two protagonists were like older men, so there's like less of just like angst, dramaticness about it. And like there's some like romance and stuff which I did like, but overall it was okay story, okay writing, okay characters, little development, and yeah. I read Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. This I gave 3.75 stars. This was a wild ride of such a strange book. I think I'm going to do a whole review on this one as well, so I'm not going to talk too much. But basically it's about the main character, Irina. It takes pictures of like average looking men, which I do quite like that idea. So it's not just like ripped, like muscular, like tall, dark, handsome men. It's like average looking men, in sort of like a submissive way. That's her sort of like her art, her like photography, I guess. And it's basically just like her sort of like different relationships, and like I really do not know how to describe this book. Basically, so she takes pictures of men, and then she gets asked to do like a photo shoot, and she's sort of like getting, but her life is sort of like rolling over and like spiraling, and yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna try and rethink my thoughts over and do a whole video on this, because it definitely deserves one, because it's definitely a book that is like, it needs discussing. I just need the time to evaluate it. But yeah, this book, I said, was very strange and deranged. Like honestly, I'm having a proper full-on crisis. Little Hot Summer reference. Yeah. The characters were all like kind of detestable, like Irina, her friend Flo, and like the men. Eddie from Tesco was like, he like objectified a bit, but like he was the best of a bad bunch in a way. And like I did felt like he was kind of cute, but like I was like, oh, Eddie. And yeah, like there was so many trigger warnings with this book. Like it's literally like I've like every page I was like add another trigger warning to my list. So yeah, but yeah, my review is really long, but I said overall I'm conflicted. It captivated me and refreshing with complex characters, but it was uncomfortable with many trauma and TW topics. It not explored well. A strange, depraved tale. Yeah, so yeah, like do not go into this like doing anything the characters do, like if anything do the opposite, because they are unhinged. But yeah, but yeah, definitely check out the video when I make it. Then I read When Tomorrow Starts Without You by H. Pierce. I gave this 4.75 stars. This is about two characters, and it alternates between their different POVs. Holly, who is 21 and has cystic fibrosis, she's making her way to oncology, and she gets stuck in the lift with Jake, who has terminal brain cancer, and he is like 20s as well, I believe. So they sort of like get talking once it gets resolved, and then at Holly's adopted live sister's birthday party, Alice's birthday party, which also happens to be Jake's twin brother Leo's like stag do, they meet again and they talk more and stuff, and then Jake asks if Holly would like to be his date to Leo's wedding and how it can benefit them both. So yeah, so there is complexities in the plot line and different things happen and blah, 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 so I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, I did think it was really like cute and nice, and like it's really like heartwarming, but also like bittersweet and quite sad, and definitely pulls on the old heartstrings. This is the first book that actually made me shed a little tear during the year. And if I cry over a book, I usually is a good book. So yeah, writing was good, not amazing or lyrical, but had good messages. I have like different like quotes about like life and love, and I feel like it just lent itself well because the characters are like dying before their normal time, like when they're supposed to, like in an ordinary life, and so everything quite like insightful there. But there are some quotes from it that like the characters say that I feel like are very like meaningful and nice. Then I read and listened to The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. This I gave 4 stars too, so very different to Herland. So this book, I didn't really get it the first time, so I did reread it, and the second time I read it alongside an audiobook through YouTube. And I would definitely recommend reading it multiple times so you can fully get to grips with what's happening, and like, because I felt a little bit lost at first, but I did understand it afterwards. Basically, we're following an unnamed protagonist who is like confined to a room in a house in the country after her husband and her brother, who are both physicians, thought that like a stay would be good for her. She has a baby and there's a nanny taking responsibility, so it's possible that the main character is suffering from like postpartum depression. Her real mental health issues are like pushed aside as like mere hysteria. Husband John is like belittles her at like times and like doesn't really take her concerns into account, something they get in common then and now, in how men believe women would just like submit and go along with like what they said. And it's about how the main character just like spent like hours in this room with like this really like ugly deteriorating yellow wallpaper, and she becomes like infatuated and hooked by it, by like searching for like a pattern and like a meaning. So instead of helping herself get like better, she's just like focused on this, and it like makes her descend into like a sort of like a mental breakdown, or like a sort of like insanity in a sense. I said the writing is not really the best, but like I don't feel like it's meant to be the most like lyrical or beautiful piece of writing anyway. It's more about the like portrayal of women's marriage and deteriorating mental health at the time, and like messages on like how harmful these attitudes towards women and mental health can be. So yeah, so I would definitely recommend this short little story. I think it's about 20 pages, about half an hour audiobook. It's accessible, and it like definitely throws up many like discussions which should be worth talking about. Then I read Poetry of My Life by Dr. Zita Sabashin. I'm sorry. This is a little poetry book. I gave this 4 stars. I said it was generally good and a reading experience. Like it's an independently published, and I feel like she's like definitely put so much like work into getting it published. So I'm a little bit more lenient. I'd say that most of the poems were probably about maybe like a 3-star, but there was some good things, like some definitely ones better than others. It's definitely like a great as like a time capsule for like 2020 to 2021 and like the COVID pandemic, because it like features like COVID lockdown and like the notion of like we will get through this. I said some of the poems were a little bit amateur with like rhyme and stuff, but most of them were good. And yeah, so I definitely would recommend this little collection if anyone can find it. I don't know how you can get it, but yeah, I think it's good because like it's from like the perspective of a doctor drawn to NHS when obviously the NHS was going through such a major like crisis, and it's good at examining the reality of people's life drawn the pandemic. So yeah, it's really good for like a time capsule, with okay quality poems. Then I read What July Knew by Emily Co. I gave this 5 stars. I'm also probably going to give the whole review on this video, this book as well. It comes out soon in February, so I plan to do a video and upload it on the day it comes out. But basically it is about July, and she knows only 18 things about her mother, one of which is that she died in a car crash when July was 2, and then in 1995 on her 10th birthday she gets a note saying she didn't die in a car accident. So then July is like, okay, this is reigniting like my like what happened to my mum, and like she can't talk to her dad because her dad is like very like violent, and like he gets like very aggressive when she asks questions about her mum, and her grandmother just like cries, so she's not much for use. Her stepmom and stepsister are like not really the most helpful either, but yeah, so over the summer July sets out to discover what happened to Maggie Hooper and who she is. So that's all I'm gonna say. But definitely the characters were very developed and complex. Some I hated, and others I loved. I was like, oh my god, July, I'm so sorry. I was actually thinking about not reading this because it's like a mystery. I'm not really most interested in mystery books, but I'm really happy I did. And it definitely deals with like trigger warning topics, specifically like domestic abuse and like child abuse, but I thought it is handled well, and it's always about like the mental impact as well as the physical impact of such like, you know, relationships. Such a page turner. Like this was like, wow, like it was literally hard to put it down because I was like, I need to know what's going to happen next. There's a few like little like plot twisty cliffhanger bits I'm like, alright, but like overall I did like it. Then the next book I read was I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki by Beck Sehi, translated by Anton Her. Title 100 out of 5 stars. That is such an amazing title. The cover 20 out of 5 stars. The content about a 3.5. Yeah, it was okay. It's marketed as like a mental health memoir, self-help, but like I don't really feel like that's really accurate, because it's basically the transcript of Beck's sessions with her psychiatrist and then some like observations. Yeah, so I don't really feel like some of the things the psychiatrist said was the most helpful or good. Oh, something she did was like childish, or about how like your anxiety can become like a burden to people and things. So I don't really feel like it's the best, and that's also been picked up by some professionals in reviews. So obviously I'm not a professional, so I can't really comment on it, but I am just rehashing some things other people have said. But yeah, it just tells you about like her discussions on this idea of like self-worth and self-esteem and depression and anxiety, and like talking about like her past like trauma with like domestic abuse, like unhealthy relationship with her older sister, embarrassment about like her social status, passivity and like relationships, being bullied, and making her like not stray away from the herd, like she just wants to be like invisible. So yeah, I also said I don't think the writing was really that good. It seemed a little bit basic or that engaging. I know it is a transcript, but like I'm talking about more like when she's doing her like summaries and like talking about things like after the actual transcripts. I don't know if like the nuance and development was lost in translation, and like meaning, eloquence, possibly so, but yeah, it was okay. And then yeah, so I just have like some like notes about like some like quotes and stuff. I don't feel like it was. I'm glad I read it. It was okay. Didn't do what it set out to do or in the best way, and there is definitely more helpful versions of this sort of book. But it was quite unique, I guess, and obviously everyone's story and struggles with mental health and things should be shown and like talked about, so that is good. But yeah, I definitely feel like it has the hype because of the title and the cover. I feel like more than the content. Then I listened to Place of Cool Waters by, I'm so sorry, I really do not want to butcher your name. Basically a third person account from Jude and Kadir at different points in their life. Jude grew up in Clarksville, Washington after being adopted, and he like has memories like in like the Scouts, because his father Tom was a Scoutmaster and middle school principal, and his mother like Doris was sometimes she was like a librarian or something. But yeah, they have like he has a nice childhood and stuff, and then like he like goes to Seattle for university and like work, and he meets with an old friend Connor who pushes him to pursue his childhood dream because like there's something happened with him. So then Jude is like, okay, I'm gonna pursue my dream of going to Kenya and going to the grave of the like scout founder and a captain man. So yeah, that is sort of the plot, and then he goes to Kenya. And then the other plot is about Kadir, who grew up under the supervision of his uncle Hussein, and like his family in Nairobi in Kenya, the capital, and he is like really smart and stuff, but he's from like Somali heritage, so there is like some like quite like he faces like discrimination, but he is like a very like nice character. And then the men meet when Jude comes to Kenya. I don't want to say, but yeah. So I didn't feel like characters were the best part of the book. There's like nuance and development. Connor was my favorite character, and like his like little storyline just was like, oh my heart was like, oh my god, so. Oh my god, I don't know. But yeah, the split narrative was okay, but it's about 70-30. Or even more from Jude's perspective, so I do feel like there could have been more from Kadir's, and like definitely feel like Jude was like the main character and then Kadir was just like sort of slide. But yeah, I said the plot was okay, but it's not really that gripping. And like I feel like it goes off on about a few too many tangents, and like it doesn't really like come together all that well. It's a little bit confusing at times. The first 50%, I wasn't like sure exactly like where it was actually going, but then like I did afterwards. But yeah, I didn't really like the narration with the audiobook, and I didn't really feel it was that engaging, a little bit boring. But yeah, so I said I would recommend it, but like I do have some reservations. Yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars. The book I read was Notes on an Execution by Danya Kukafka. This book was exceptional. Oh my god, I gave this 5 stars. Phenomenal, like wow. I'm like, a thriller, who am I? the last thriller I read, I hated Paper Ghost. Like, who am I reading a thriller and liking it? What is actually happening? But this book was exceptional. So definitely I'm going to do a whole video on this. Basically it's about Ansel Packer, who he wakes up on the day he's going to be executed, and it's from like a second person account, so it's like, you did this, you did that and stuff. It's about his like days and like recollections and stuff. And interspersed between this storyline is the narrative from 3 people that touched Ansel's life. Like, was only in it for a little bit, but like he had a major impact on their life. They are his mum Lavender, like an ex like school friend in an orphanage, and who turns out to be the detective who puts him away for murder, Saffron or Safi, and the twin sister of his wife Hazel. And then we get a glimpse into each of their lives as it unfolds, and like it just touching on many things. Oh my god, the pacing was exceptional. Like, it is so good because like it's just I don't understand like how this was so good. So yeah, I just have so much to say about this book. And like it was really good. Like, it really like makes you think about so many things, and this sort of like idea of like the death penalty and like justice, and just like a lot of things, and just so many I do not know. I need to get my thoughts together because this book is really one that I'm like, what is going on? But yeah, I love this book. And the writing was like beautiful and like really lovely, and like to deal with like things about like murder and like really like bad topics, but to have such nice writing is like kind of strange, but it's really good. So yeah, I would so recommend that book. Then I read If the Silence Takes You by Jessie Withers. I give this 4.5 stars. Basically, it starts not long after World War II with Tommy. He receives a postcard in French from an old friend, lover, Antoine, and then his sister Sophie is like, can you come accompany me home? So he does that, and her colleague Molly starts talking with Tommy and asks him out. And the date is it's okay, but there's no spark. Molly comes back and translates the postcard and says that Antoine is coming to Dover to see if Tommy is still there. So then Tommy does, and then they recollect and stuff, and then interspersed between these are also chapters that are back during the war, like in 1940, when Tommy and Antoine come to England after like being hurt, and they go to like a home, and because he's French, Antoine is meant to be repatriated back to France, but they sort of like run away and then come back. And then yes, I said that the characters, what I did really like them, and it was like well developed and lovable, and like you definitely see different like sides to them. There's a few things that I was like, I wish kind of changed, but like still mostly good. The writing is like quite transportive. It's not the most eloquent, but like it's still quite well crafted, and everything like makes you think. And I did like the setting and messages, and like bits sweet, close to tearing up at times, but I didn't actually shed any. Mayflies by Andrew O'Hagan. I actually have a whole video on this, which you can see up there. I read this and then watched the TV adaptation. Basically, I give this 4 stars, and this is such a solid 4-star book. Basically it's about sort of like a love letter to like male friendships, and something that you don't really see in literature or much things about, like this platonic love between men. And like banter is, but like the actual like affection and comfort and like pleasantry you feel just being in the surroundings of someone that you love, but like platonically. Yeah, so basically it's like in 2 parts. Starts off in 1986, and the main character James and his childhood friend Tully are like trying to figure out what to do with their life and stuff, and then they go to Manchester for like to see some like concerts, which is like an epic weekend, and like youthful excesses, and they agree to go at life differently. And then the second half is from 2017, when James gets a call from Tully saying that he is dying of cancer, and he only has like 4 months left. And then Tully asks him to do something that he feels like he should do, obligated to, but like has many reservations. So yeah, so what I'm gonna say, the characters are definitely well written, definitely main two, and like the general writing is quite like good and lyrical and well penned. I feel like the pacing of the little disjointed, quite slow in 86, and then it goes quite fast in 2017. And I didn't really like some of the like contemporary references, because it's literary fiction, it's not like a contemporary book, sort of about like vaping and Netflix and stuff, which I just don't really like to read much of. But the 80s references was really great. I love anything set in the 80s. I love that like era. So yeah, I definitely feel like there's definitely more of it that I did like than I didn't like. And yeah, I would definitely recommend this, and the TV adaptation was very good as well. I really loved how in that they sort of like went back throughout the plot line. It wasn't like actually split in two whole sections. It was like one section and then it went back, which I do feel like might have been beneficial to the book. But yeah, still recommend this book. I listened to The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. I gave this 3 stars. It was okay. It was alright. Basically, it's about a time traveler who tells us like his friends about like the previous week, where he went to the year of 802,701 AD, and like humanity is like a socialist sort of like paradise with like there's no toil like economically, and everyone lives in like large palaces, and they're all vegetarians, and like they're all like the same size, and they're all like they're seemingly like genderless, and they all speak like the same language, and like the children are basically like miniature versions of the adults, which is kind of weird, but like yeah. And yeah, there's more, and I did feel like it was quite strange, and like at first glance I was like, how is he getting all this information just by like looking? Okay, writing was fine. Characters weren't really that developed or likable. The setting was okay. There's some messages, but definitely like more, I guess. I don't know. The story was okay. I'm not a sci-fi reader at all, or like a futuristic thing, but this was in the Apple Books, like free audiobooks, and I wanted to read a classic and like the granddaddy of like sci-fi. So I'm glad I did read it, but it wasn't really my personal cup of coffee. But the audiobook narrated by Kelsey Grammer was quite well. He's like quite passionate and like clear. And yeah, so if I was reading this physically, I would have DNF'd it, but because it was audibly, I just thought I'd just carry on and just see how it develops, but I didn't really care about it. So yeah, and also the relationship with Weena, it's kind of a bit like cringy, because she's always references being like small and like childlike, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know, it's a bit strange. I don't know, I don't really like that. But yeah. Then I read Four Darks by Alice Vogel. This I gave 3 stars too. This is another one I will be doing a whole video on because I have a lot to say. This is it really conflicted me in my brain, this one. Basically, Jack, he just turned 16. He goes to the Tate Gallery, and an older man like starts flirting with him, and he doesn't know it, but like he sort of does. But he doesn't want to go back home after visiting the gallery because his dad is abusive. So he goes with this man James, and yeah, and then there's also another plot line about Jack's like a fellow person at Jack's gym, Marcus, and their sort of like relationship. I don't know. It's so clear that like Jack is like yearning for like love and like affection and stuff, but he's looking in all the wrong places, and his vulnerability is like really like taken for granted. And it's just it's a very gritty and unpleasant read. And like there's a mysterious thing about like his mother and brother like disappearing, or like when he was younger, not disappearing but like going away, but like it's not really explored all that much. And it's like I don't, you know, like I could have, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so I say from the first 30% I definitely was very invested in it, and I like the main character like really had my heart, but like as it went on I did sort of like get lost. This is not like a normal 3-star where I don't really care about it. It's one where there is a lot of good things and a lot of bad things, and they really like they cancel each other out, and that's why I gave it 3 stars. Really, really intriguing, but there is definitely things that I didn't like. But definitely check out my video when I make that, because that will just be like a whole like deep dive into this book and the themes and messages and just everything. Then I read How to Maintain Eye Contact by Robert Wood Lynn. It's a poetry collection I gave 2.5 stars to. It's basically split into 3 sections about like rehearsals for being, departure, and the apocalypse. And I didn't really like get the theme all too much, but yeah, I don't know. The last bit was the best, about how like what are we doing to the earth, and but like more like metaphorically I guess, and like how like when all the ice melts, like we're not going to be like strangers because we're all one people dying. The only thing I took from section 1 or 2 were about like rules and expectations that people have on like we all have for people that we like somehow like agree with from birth, even though we don't agree with being born. It's something that happens to us, but like we never consent to it. But then like once we are born and we start taking breath and start living, we are all like, we all have this set of rules and expectation that we have to follow. Like that we have like a billion heartbeats. It was marketed as being quite like funny and witty, but I didn't really get that at all. I didn't really feel like there was much meaning in the poems that I personally got out of them, and there's sort of like there's not really much like link in them either, but there is like a recurring like theme, like a motif of like animal like death, specifically cat death, which I don't like reading. It's not explicit, but it's still just like I don't know. I said I would recommend it like if you just want a short collection to get through, but I didn't get anything really from it, and I didn't really like the poems, so yeah, take it as you will. Yep. Then I read Ladies of Legend by Blanche Saba, translated by Alison Charette. I gave this 5 stars. This is a book about refocusing the tale of 21 women from fairy tales and mythology or like pop culture from like a more like a female perspective, and there's like lots of diversity like geographically and temporally. It's a graphic novel sort of, and like there's like nice artwork, and like it sort of like tells the story, what actually happened, and then sort of like links it to other like books and graphic novels and films and podcasts and different things like that. Most of these like referenced works are by like French authors, which I don't really have a problem with, because like obviously the author is French and it was first published in France, and I feel like it's quite good because I got some recommendations for French literature, which is something I want to get into more. So yeah, I really would recommend this. Super easy to get from, really interesting, and it does touch on like trigger warning topics like rape and murder, and obviously like misogyny, sexism, because it's about these tellings of these like mythological things from a feminist perspective, but it's more just like the real perspective and just taken away like from the traditional male oriented versions. So yeah, so maybe not appropriate for ages, but I do feel like it's handled well, and like it does talk on like things that like children's like stories and like things that like Frozen and stuff, that you should read, but obviously there is some topics, you know. But yeah, I feel like I might maybe do a video on this as well, just like going through each of the one and what I actually learned and how I got what I got from them. So yeah. Then I DNF'd The Boot Camp by Kate Harrison at 34%. I said this is not bad, but I didn't really care for the characters or storyline. Maybe like in a few more years time I might be more interested in it, but yeah, it was very like mediocre, and it was gonna be a 3-star, so I was like, I don't really want to continue if I'm not going to enjoy it, and I definitely do want to DNF more books that I'm not enjoying this year before I actually finish them. So yeah, I read his collection, Stories to Make You Smile, compiled by Fanny Blake. This is by like lots of different authors. There's 10 different stories. It says on average the collection got 2.83, but I rounded up to 3 stars. It was okay. I did feel like some, like, they sort of slightly got worse as it went on, and the one that was my favorite and made me smile the most was the first one. So the narration was quite good. It's an audiobook, and the stories are like quite well paced, and yeah, like they was fine. They weren't the most interesting or like things, but it was okay, and it was quite good just because it was all about like 15 to 20 minutes long. Just primarily light-hearted and just easy to get through, but it just wasn't really to my taste exactly. The last book I read or listened to is Listen Mama by Manny Williams. This was narrated by J.D. Jackson, and I thought this really fit well because it's a memoir told through letters from Manny to his mother, from his like childhood to early 30s, and they're being read out, and I thought it just adds like a good level of like attachment to the characters, and I did really enjoy this. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars. It's a memoir, so it's quite hard to judge it because you're basically like judging someone's life, but it's basically about Manny and his relationship with his mother, who is dealing with quite like bad mental health problems, schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, and depression, and also like parenting his 4 other siblings whilst he's quite young, and like it's so clear that Manny really desperately wants like love and affection and a good relationship with his mum, but because of her problems it's really difficult to actually have that, and it's really like heartbreaking because you really feel for him so much, and he's so smart and so like determined and such a great person, but he's just not getting what he wants or deserves. And yeah, I don't know, it's really sad. And he also he was born into poverty in Houston. He was disfigured from after a few months old, from like a fire injury, I believe, and he has to which led to bullying. He has to care for his all his family, and this continues throughout. And yeah, and there's many times when you're just Manny, I'm so sorry, I want to give you a cuddle. Yeah, it's sort of like a vicious cycle as well, that you're oh. He later experiences his own mental health problems as well, which I feel like the comments he makes is quite really personal and quite insightful as well. Yeah, and I feel like after about 30% through, when he stops referring, well, he doesn't stop, but he starts referring to his mother by her name, Salita, it sort of changes from this idea of how he's not staying because he wants to, but staying more because he has to. And he talks about all the sacrifices he has to make, and yeah. But I definitely feel like this is good. I gave it 4 stars because I felt like in quite a few of the letters it definitely got on. I didn't really know where it was going. It dragged on a bit, and there was quite a bit of repetition with certain like themes and topics. But so like, obviously, and there's like some things that are like quite frustrating, where you're like if this was fiction, I'll just be like, oh my Manny, please just stop doing this, just please just carry on with this, or you know. But obviously it's not, it's a memoir of someone's life, so that's not possible. Definitely enjoyed it, but it was quite difficult to read. I think the audiobook version is definitely a very good way to take in it, because it adds a attachment. But yeah, I definitely would recommend it. So yeah, they are all the 23 books I read in January. This video is going to be so long, oh my god, I need to start making long wrap-ups. But yeah, definitely check out some of the videos I make on the books I mentioned that will have their own reviews of, because I definitely read a lot that are like mind-boggling ones that are like, what's going on now? So yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video anyway, and I shall see you very soon. Bye bye.